To order. Thank everybody for being here. Senator Walker, if you would open us up in prayer, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bow with me, please. Heavenly Father, we pause and give you thanks for the many blessings you give us. We want to lift up the families that have lost loved ones in the recent tragedies yesterday, and we don't understand, Father, why these things happen, but we know that you are in control, and we pray that you will surround them with love and comfort and lead and guide us and as we do the work for the citizens of Georgia today. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Chairman. We certainly concur with your prayer. Certainly. Thank you so much for that. We're going to go in order today. House Bill 141, Representative Houston Gaines. It is your honors. We're going with the youth movement today. All right. If you don't mind coming up here to the podium, and I know you're no longer the youngest person in the General Assembly, but we certainly appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 141, this legislation comes on behalf of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and essentially what this legislation does is it would ensure that victims of violent crime, there's a program, the Crime Victims Compensation Program, that awards up to $25,000 for victims of violent crime in our state. $15,000 of that can be used for medical expenses. And what this legislation does, it ensures that if a provider were to accept payment, they could use the workers' compensation fee schedule for those expenses, which currently it's at cost, which is out of norm with other states that have these programs, and would also ensure that those expenses are the payment is considered payment in full. Jay Neal, who's the director, is here and can give more details and help answer questions if there are any, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Gaines, we're going to put a pause on your bill, and I'm going to come back to that, so I apologize, Mr. Neal, former representative. And we're going to move on to House Bill 307, which is the virtual visits, telehealth visit. Chair Lady Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the telemedicine, telepsychiatry bill. It does about 4 major things. The first one, because of the pandemic and our emergency status, we have been allowed, or physicians have been allowed to use telemedicine like never before. In fact, it's probably because of the pandemic, if there's any one good thing that's come out of it, it's how familiar physicians have gotten, and patients have become accustomed to using telemedicine to have their visits with their physicians. This is if the emergency situation goes away, we needed to have many of the things that have been allowed under this emergency orders to be put into our law. So that's what it does. But it does specifically, it requires coverage of telehealth medicine to be paid at the same rate as in-person services. It requires coverage of audio-only services in certain circumstances. Today, as a result of COVID, we are seeing more depression, anxiety, substance abuse, young people considering suicide, higher suicide rates, child pornography. In the mental health field, the increases have been astronomical of the problems that we are seeing. So mental health services are the one area that lend themselves to more broad use of phone telemedicine by itself. Now, of course, we would encourage patients to use Zoom, but not everyone has Zoom, especially in areas where we have a lack of broadband, people who do not have the technology, or they don't have the transportation to go somewhere where they can have the technology. So this bill would allow, in the use of psychiatry and mental health services, for it to continue to be used on a phone basis. And there is also a provision that in more emergency situations where a patient doesn't have the means to communicate and have Zoom and all, that also other areas of medicine could use it. It also, the bill requires, prohibits a stricter form of utilization review. It means that insurance companies can't make prior authorization of telemedicine visits any harder than they do for just regular visits. And also, it prohibits an insurer from requiring a special vendor. There are vendors now going around and saying, like to United, use our system. And and then they go to Aetna and say, another one goes and says, use the system. This would be very difficult for physicians. They all would include a different password, a different way to get into the portal. So what we're saying is that if a physician or a health provider has a service they already use and they're familiar with, an insurance company cannot say they have to use the specific one that they want them to use. They have to be accommodating in that area. And that is what this bill does. I'll be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Any questions from the committee? If not, we have a couple folks who signed up in favor. Didn't have anybody sign up in opposition, so if you don't mind, we can give them a couple minutes each. Aubrey and Ms. Sherrod, do y'all mind being brief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Aubrey Valines, on behalf of the Georgia Optometric Association, the Georgia Chiropractic Association, the Licensed Professional Counselors Association, the Advanced Practice Registered Nurse, the Georgia Commission of Women, and the Georgia Injury Workers Advocacy Claimants Lawyers for Workers' Comp. We support this legislation and applaud her for bringing it forward. We ask you to pass it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bethany Scher with the Medical Association of Georgia. We want to thank Chairman Cooper and Chairman Watson for bringing this bill to the committee today, and we urge you to pass it. We are in full support of this legislation.
Thank you. Any questions for either? No questions for either. All right. Well, we appreciate that. Nobody else testify? Any follow-up questions for the chair lady? If not, this is a yes. 13.
Yes. Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, as we're headed this direction, does anybody in the medical community think an in-person visit is more effective than a telephone call?
Yes,
Seems
sir.
like we're headed that way pretty quickly, where we just don't have to examine a patient in person anymore.
No, sir. That certainly is encouraged. The medical board already has certain rules in place. Their societies have certain rules that they have in place in the use of telemedicine. So no, this is not totally, and that's why we very limited only to psychiatry. But it's still in psychiatry would be better, but we are horribly short of psychiatrists and any kind of mental health workers in professionals in the rural areas. So to make it easier with a pandemic that we have in mental health problems, for patients to reach mental health workers, we felt like that was really important.
Right. Just as an aside and follow up there, so the positives from a pandemic is the encouragement of the virtual visits, and but to answer Senator Calzert's question, there's absolutely a need for in-person visits.
Right.
You can't. It's hard to check a blood pressure over a computer line, and you need that. The one-on-one in the same room, so forth. So thank you for bringing this. This updates that. And if there are no further questions, someone has already called dibs on the making a motion, Senator Burke.
Move to pass, Mr. Chairman.
All
House
right.
Bill 307, LC 338760S.
And we have a second from Senator Kirkpatrick. Let's do, I don't think this is terribly controversial, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. So we pass unanimously. Thank you, Chair Lady. You are, if you would just hang with us and let's sort of regroup here. Give me just a minute at ease. We're back to we had suspended Representative Gaines for the first bill, House Bill 141. We had a late arriving substitute. That's with permission of the chairman. And so I would like for Representative Gaines to follow up on that. And then if we have any questions for former Representative Jay Neal, will go with that.
And I haven't seen the substitute, but, you know, on our bill, it would be, again, for victims of violent crime, allowing them to, the provider to consider that cost, that payment in full, and then again, would use the workers' compensation fee schedule.
Right. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Section 1? All right. Then we have Section 2. Senator Cowser, you can do that right from your place there.
This is more transparency in the costs charged by the hospitals and collected for insurance, and kind of a truth in billing portion.
Okay. Do you have any questions on Section 2? All right, Senator Hatchett, 4.
I was going to direct this to the author if they're aware of these changes, but we had a similar bill about this in judiciary, and one of the issues that was brought up was the issue of subrogation with insurance companies, and the issue of whether or not someone has insurance or doesn't. Will the jury be able to find out? I mean, this is a very complex issue that we argued at length in judiciary. It was turned down, and I don't want to draw out this committee again and I'll rehash all these arguments. But,
Yeah, no, I understand. Senator Cowsert, I mean, I think Senator Kirkpatrick, Kennedy, Cowsert, and I were there. I think we remember those. Senator Cowsert?
It's similar to that. I hadn't seen this language till today, but I get the idea, and I think we addressed the subrogation issue there, that medical insurer would still be allowed to subrogate for any amounts recovered by an injured party. You know, this doesn't prohibit that in any way.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
in order to be transparent to a jury, would you be open to an amendment to allow the jury to know that the health insurance company has the ability to subrogate?
I don't know how you could do that without injecting the issue of insurance, but you might could do that through something, in camera with the court. Certainly like in uninsured motorist situations where you reduce a verdict by the amounts paid. I think courts would be entitled to do that here. Of course, in a workers' comp context like this original bill, they have subrogation rights, and they can bring, their action for subrogation against any. They can intervene in a case against a tortfeasor to recover any amounts they paid under workers' comp.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, and I totally understand what you're saying, and I think, the intent behind the bill is good. If you're, this was the phantom damages that you referred to. I think you called it phantom damages in judiciary. Is that correct?
The case I had was, I'm not sure, the case, the bill. I hadn't seen if, I don't believe this is identical, but it's a similar concept.
Right, and so in the issue, for fairness and to be transparent with a jury, if you put forth, the amount paid by the insurance company and not the amount that was billed, and that's, so the jury knows what the amounts were actually paid, would it be fair to let the jury know that if they award those, that the health insurance company by law is allowed to recover all of that money from the plaintiff, and that the plaintiff would not be able to recover any of the premiums they paid to get that benefit of having an insurance company negotiate the contract with the healthcare provider? It's just that information, if we're going to be completely transparent, is something that needs to be brought to the attention of the jury as well. And I'm just asking, for transparency and fairness, would you be open to an amendment that would allow that?
I think that adds complexity to this that's not warranted at this place in the code, but if that's something another bill might address, it's a concept I'm open to exploring with you.
Senator Walker?
I was just I'm not on judiciary, and I was gonna ask, is this the phantom damage?
It's similar for
Bill.
sure, but it's not the bill that I had introduced. It's very, very similar to, I believe it was SB 190.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't know who offered this substitute, but if Chairman Cowser or could just quickly try to explain it to me. Or
I'll do the
you
best I
could,
can.
Chairman
It's-
Watson, if it's your,
It's the committee sub, but I'm familiar with the subject matter, whichever your preference, Mr.
I
Chairman.
think you're more familiar with the subject matter.
Essentially, that concept of phantom damages or damages not really incurred by a person that's injured in a car accident or any other type of negligent act. And if the hospital's bill or the medical provider's bill reflects a price, what I call the retail price or the kind of sticker price of services, but they have accepted a lower rate as compensation in full, then it's unfair for the injured party to recover an amount that they never had to pay. So they're limited to recovering the amount that they were actually charged for the services, and that's the transparency piece here, to not create this legal fiction to inflate damages in any type of negligence action above what the person really incurred.
so it's not, can I
No,
have a
you can
follow-up?
certainly follow up.
Chairman Cowser, so there are other, I guess the injured party, then they could still get other, loss of
You're
time
hunting
or,
for pain and suffering. Yes, they can get compensation for any medical expenses, either past or present, that there's evidence that they will incur. And they can recover for lost wages, and they can recover for their pain and suffering that they've undergone as a result of their injury. This does not limit those other forms of recovery in any way, just limits the form of recovery for medical expenses to the amounts you actually incurred or anticipate you will incur.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more, if you'll indulge me.
All righty.
What if, oftentimes you may have an injury, I would think, in an auto accident that may require medical treatment for the rest of your life, or
Surely.
unforeseen problems if you're young, and when you get older, then it flares back up, or you have to have back surgery or something later that you didn't anticipate, or how's that handled?
That's a separate element of damages. You can have your past medical expenses that have actually been incurred, and you can have future medical expenses that the evidence supports that you most likely will incur in the future. So this does not prevent recovery for those future medical expenses or future pain and suffering. If it's something you're going to be a paraplegic and be suffering for the remainder of your life, you're still able to recover for those damages.
All right, thank you, Chairman. One more question? Sure. And we'll come back to you.
If I pay my if I pay my health insurance's premiums every month for my entire life and never have a single claim, and for my family it's over $1,000, and I never have a single claim, and then I get injured, and I've paid all this money to have the benefit of a huge insurance company contract with a hospital on my behalf, and we want to be transparent and show the jury how much I've actually incurred in medical expenses, would my premiums constitute medical expenses? If I paid $80,000 worth of medical premiums over my life and never had a single claim, and then I come into court and they say, no, you didn't, the only benefit, the only thing you paid to get this was what your insurance paid. Would you allow an amendment to at least allow that to be presented so we can show exactly what they actually paid?
Okay, let me tell you why that doesn't make sense. Just your subrogation answer a little while ago. Well, first of all, you're paying health insurance for any kind of illness or malady. You've got children, so your personal example, yours has been used, at least for the childbirth, et cetera, but it's to cover any health event in your lifetime, and it's hard to parcel out what portion of that would be for injuries caused by a car wreck. And in this case, you recover for the injuries recovered in the car wreck. Your insurance company's already paid you, so they have the right to recover that money under subrogation. So they're taking that into account when they calculate your premium, that if you're hurt by somebody else, they're going to be reimbursed for that. So your premium paid for that portion has been recouped.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know how many other people in here that were privy to the discussions in judiciary, but I know that I wasn't. And so I feel that this amendment or substitute is out of order.
Well, that's your opinion. It is
I'm
the
just
chair's
expressing
discretion,
my
and
opinion,
I
Mr.
appreciate
Chairman.
that. Thank you. Any other questions? If I see no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for Senator Burke.
Pass the House Bill 141, the committee substitute 4131116S.
All right, so we have a do pass, LC 4131116S. That's House Bill 141. Looking for a second. Senator Dolezal is seconded. Let's do a show of hands on this bill. All those in favor, raise your hand. I'm sorry. Let's put the hands down. I apologize. You had some further discussion. All right. What you got?
So I don't think this is, I mean, this issue's been vetted thoroughly in judiciary, and I'm not comfortable really voting
That's-
on it, and I don't want to kill the underlying bill. So my amendment would be to strike Section 2 and change the title paragraph to,
Yeah, I'm not going to accept that amendment. That kills that substitute, and this is prerogative of the chairman. So we're going to go back to a
All
vote,
right.
okay?
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we got 6, 4. And all those opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6-6. I'm the chairman. I'm breaking the tie. Passes 7-6. Appreciate that, Representative Gaines. We're moving on to House Bill 645, Representative Micah Gravely. All right, well, so we got something, another bill not controversial here, so we'll go with that. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm proud to see a day where a medical cannabis bill is not controversial, considering other things we're contemplating in this legislature. So thank you, and thank you for the committee for hearing this measure. This was, as you all know, we passed House Bill 324 2 years ago in 2019, and it was revered as the most conservative medical cannabis bill that has passed in the nation. Utah, my understanding, has passed their bill based upon our efforts. And then I spoke to legislators in Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Oklahoma, who also wanted to duplicate our efforts in their states. To further dig down and to make this bill something that we can all be proud of, the Department of Law and DOAS, along with the newly appointed director of the commission, Andrew Turnage, and the members of the commission, were able, they had a bit of a snafu over the last year, trying to just get the legalese corrected, quite frankly, on how we do concealed bids, how we're going to dispense this product, actually even the definition of products. So this bill, and I don't know, do all of you have the line-by-line analysis of the bill? Okay. So we can go through that, but really what it does, it just tightens up the language, Mr. Chairman. It defines products. There was a drafting error earlier. We are not going to we're not adding any extra delivery systems. When we talk about medical cannabis here in this state, we're not talking about smoking, we're not talking about edibles, we're not talking about vaping, we're not talking about recreational use. We are talking about tinctures, transdermal patches, lotions, and gelatin capsules. We also gave a little bit of teeth to the Oversight Committee, which has not been appointed, but that gives the legislature the ability to continue to work with the commission and continue to seek the input from physicians in the medical community. And I believe it would be a fantastic trifecta for the commission, the Oversight Committee, and our body, both here in the House and Senate, to continue to oversee this industry to make sure that we have good actors that are producing safe, lab-tested, and effective medicine for the citizens of this state. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to, it's 2 pages here. I'm happy to go through each line, but I know that we also...
No, I mean, we have it in our packets, and this is an issue that's been around for 11 years now.
Yes, sir.
And this has evolved over a decade now. So I appreciate, and you've been one that's been there from the very beginning.
Yes, sir.
I hate to invoke former representatives or chairmen, but and we certainly miss Alan Peake.
Yes, sir, we do.
But we're keep on moving. So I'll ask what I'll do is we'll get questions for you, and then we have a few people who signed up, and we have a couple of letters in our packets though are the line by line, and a small amendment. We actually have 2 amendments, and the Sheriff's Association is consistent. They're consistently against this, so we all understand that. But that is in your packet. They have been consistent for quite some time. So let's do, does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I know we're working off of a substitute. I don't have that particular substitute. I know y'all do, but I just wanted to...
I will be happy to share it with you. Sorry
Thank you,
about
sir.
that. This is it, right?
I have it. Thank you.
So LC
Senator Orrick.
338765S.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And so why don't we get, let's Greg LaDuca, and then we're going to limit this to 2 minutes because we got 18, that would be 18 minutes, but I guarantee you sometimes things tend to go over. And we have some folks online too. So somebody's going to be a timekeeper up here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it.
Chairman. Thank you for allowing us to appear before the committee today. Let's Get Clear Georgia is concerned about prevention of marijuana abuse. We're a 501c3. I'm the executive director. My doctorate is in human development from the Institute for Child Study, University of Maryland. So I've been a treatment provider in the past as well as a prevention provider. So very concerned about the care of the patient and the well-being of all Georgians, children, and families. We're not opposing 645, but we do have 3 provisions in the bill that we are very concerned about for the well-being of Georgians. The first of these is the way the licenses for dispensing would be awarded. The bill calls for the dispensing licenses to be awarded to production licensees directly. we would rather see a process to avoid risks whereby each dispensing license be applied for on an individual basis by applying to a regulatory agency such as the Access to Medical Cannabis Commission and being approved by the Access to Medical Cannabis Commission rather than potentially hundreds of dispensing licenses being granted to the directly to the production licensees. A second provision that we have difficulty with is, and that was related to lines 160 through 177 in Section 5. I haven't seen the substitute either, but in the original bill it was lines 160 to 177. So a second point of concern is the potential number of dispensaries, which is really unlimited in 645. There's a formula that talks about more than one retail outlet within a reasonable driving distance of every registered THC patient's
Dr.
home in
Raduca,
Georgia.
Your time's up. I appreciate it, and if we can circle back to you, we will. But we're tight for time. Into the session. Thank you so much. Ginger Kester.
I do have a memo for the committee.
That's fine.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Ginger Kester, and I am a member of Let's Be Clear, Georgia. I'm also a parent and a mother. I am a mother whose life has been deeply impacted and forever changed. My youngest son, Parker, began experimenting with marijuana at the age of 14. He became addicted to marijuana at the age of 16. At the age of 17, he transferred to more harsh drugs and opioids. At the age of 19, my youngest child lost his life, and he was found dead in his college dorm room. That is why I'm very concerned about line 489 through 497, which would allow local governments to decrease the minimum distance to a 1,000-foot buffer zone specified in the HOPE Act between dispensaries and covered entities. This would mean a city or county government could pass ordinances whereby a THC retail store could be located next door to a church or even an elementary school. The reason given to allow such ordinances is in line 492 through 493. Modification to the buffer zone would be done to allow retail outlets to be established to service registered patients residing within such local jurisdiction.
We really appreciate that. Thank you so.
Thank you so much, sir.
We appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. Next is we have a Luke Neforitas, SAM.
Yep, that's me. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go. Thank you.
Very good. Chair, I want to recognize you. Thank you for your excellent service to the state. I am from Colorado, but I'm praying for everyone in Georgia right now. Terribly sorry for what's happened, and hoping we'll get to the bottom of it. So just know you're all in my prayers. We have some concerns about this bill. I'm the executive vice president for SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. We are led by a science advisory board of marijuana researchers from Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. We're nonpartisan, nonprofit, working on the marijuana issue from a lot of different angles. Particularly lines 176 through 177 concern us in terms of the potential to allow a virtually unlimited number of dispensaries for the THC products in your state. And the reason why we have concern about that is because here in my state of Colorado, when we allowed medical marijuana, now albeit our medical marijuana was way wilder than yours is, and you're to be commended for having it, much more strictly regulated. But when we allowed that, we ended up having more medical marijuana dispensaries than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. So we had an enormous amount. And, I think when we're looking at providing access to patients, we have to put, the healthcare interests of the patient. Obviously, we want to put that above any potential profit interests, which I think certainly is the concern of this committee, is helping patients. But sometimes that can get murky. And so I think from the industry's perspective, they may want to set up a lot more shops than are needed. So I think an interesting example to look at for distributing and how many licenses to give out might be to look at the Florida example, where they set up geographic regions and had a ratio of kind of, however many patients are in this region, there would be a certain number of pot shops for that. So basically, I think that proportional representation might be more effective here. So we wanted to throw that out there. The final thing I will say is this: there's a lot of scientific research on the impact of allowing a medical marijuana dispensary in a community. A number of research studies over the last 3 years have found that youth use of the drug, as well as youth perceptions of, lower risk perception of marijuana among youth, all those indicators go up when there is a dispensary in the community.
Thank you.
So there is an impact on the negative side of allowing a large number of stores, and we have to think about
so much.
those impacts.
Next person, Stuart Grifflow from APTPAD, APTPAD. Stuart Grifflow is online also. Love that
Good
background.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Stu Gitlow. I'm a past president of the American Society of Addiction Medicine, a national professional organization representing over 6,000 addiction specialists nationwide, and the past chair of the American Medical Association's Council on Science and Public Health. I've specialized in addiction psychiatry for 30 years, but I'd like to talk first briefly about our state laws throughout the country that require all of us to wear seatbelts. Now, obviously, the majority of people would not be thrown through the windshield in a car accident over the course of their lives. But in this country, we're willing to forego some personal liberties to protect the minority who would otherwise be harmed. We therefore accepted years ago that we should all wear seatbelts so that the minority who would have been injured have a better chance to stay safe. Now, with 5% THC, we get addictive disease in 9% of adults who use it and 16% of adolescents. That's a minority, but a substantial minority that deserve protection. And it's impossible to tell in advance which individuals would suffer the risk, just as it's impossible to know who will be in a car accident. Now, the American Psychiatric Association has issued a white paper stating there's no demonstrated medical value in THC for those with primary psychiatric disorders. So given the absence of demonstrated benefit and our knowledge of certain risk, it's incumbent upon us to do as much as possible to ameliorate the risk. For these reasons, at the very least, warning labels are critically important. Age minimums to protect our young are equally crucial. I urge the committee to consider the American Medical Association's and American Psychiatric Association's guidance, which I'm providing with respect to these issues. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. And next will be Kathy Windholt.
Thank you all very much for seeing me. Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Windholt McDade, and I'm the current president of Let's Get Clear Georgia. I'm also a mother of 2 grown children who I'm glad to say are alive and well today. But I'm concerned about the THC oil that Georgia has approved for those residents who are suffering from disease and pain. I'm glad that it's made available to those who need it through the Georgia legislature. That's a good thing for those who need it. But my concern is the access to THC oil that can occur for those with no medical reason for utilizing it. And those are some of those that we are suffering for today. I've always strived to protect my children from harm, and I believe that all children deserve that same protection. I believe there's no reason to allow this THC oil dispensaries anywhere near places where children regularly gather. The state of Georgia has wisely decided that these dispensaries should be a minimum distance from our children. Dispensaries across the state of Georgia provide access for registered patients. So allowing municipalities to increase access to these products creates a negative impact from a good intention. As availability of and access to THC oil increases, so will diversion. The illegal sale of THC oil from medical cannabis patients to our youth and young adults is already being reported by addiction treatment clinicians in the state of Georgia. That opportunity is simply not a risk that we need to take with our young people. We need to control this as much as possible, and this is one means of limiting this unintended consequence. I respectfully request that lines 489 through 497 be omitted from the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Windholt. Appreciate you keeping it to 2 minutes. Next is Mr. Right Reverend Gregory Carl Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, it's hard for, I put down I was questioning the bill because it's hard for me to come out against it if, since this bill empowers the office of Mr. Right Reverend Gregory Carl Davis to grow a crop in exemption when you empower the state to take a limited approach here, you also empower the church. And I'm pointing out that in this, I'm objecting though, in the present state of the bill, it requires a home grow provision. What our problem here with the bill is that it provides for a manufactured marijuana as a medicine, and that doesn't conform to the United Nations treaty obligations. The United Nations just recently has removed a Schedule I as a definition for cannabis medicine as no medical use and a drug of abuse, and now is defined as a Schedule IV only, which is to be studied. So our Georgia state-sponsored research program is an excellent vehicle for determining the efficacy of this cannabis. As a provider, I get referrals from licensed physicians, and I treat them with the 5% low THC oil. And what I've found is that a 0.5% added of cannabis, of CBD, knocks the euphoric effect down, and I'm effectively treating opiates addiction. These patients come to me and they're strung out on all kinds of different opiate pain medicines, and what we're able to do is take them off of their
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I gave you all a handout so that you can consider this.
We understand you're a homegrown advocate. Gotcha. Brandy Bickle, Georgia's own credit union.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, committee.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time today. My name is Brandy Bickle. I work for Georgia's own credit union. I am here in support of this bill, and I appreciate the committee's time on this today. There is a provision in the bill that would allow parity between banks and credit unions to allow credit unions to be able to hold these accounts of the licensees. I support this from the ability perspective, so thank you. I support this bill from a timing perspective. The temperament is really changing in Congress right now from how they view all of these products and entities, and we should see the Safe Banking Act start moving ahead forward. So timing-wise, this is ideal timing for the Georgia legislature to act on this particular piece of legislation. And personally, I am hugely supportive of this bill from a peace of mind standpoint. I watched the low THC study committees throughout the summer when you guys had those 2 or 3 years ago, specifically to prevent any sort of disproportion issue between financial institutions. And I personally missed when that amendment was added in the Senate committee at the end. So this is a nice chance to fix it. So thank you, committee.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Andrew Tarnage, maybe it's Turnage, Executive Director, Medical Georgia Cannabis Commission. Is Mr. Turnage outside or online? Oh, coming in the door. Here we go.
Good afternoon.
Welcome there. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Andrew Turnage, and I'm the Executive Director for the newly created Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. GMCC is a state agency for those that are not aware, and I'm really speaking to the camera today for people who may be watching that are not as informed outside of this room. The most important components to follow up on some of the testimony that I've heard prior to walking into the room today. As a state agency, we've worked very closely with Representative Gravely, the industry, and several of the stakeholders, including the patient families, to bring you the update in 645 substitute. The information that's really important for you to know is that this commission is formed to carefully license and regulate oversight of medical cannabis in Georgia. This occurs in controlled greenhouses that are surrounded with fences, key card access, 24/7 surveillance cameras, and that RFP process is currently in process. We're in the process of licensing those individuals in Class 1 and Class 2. Those are the only lawful pathways that medical cannabis can be produced in our state. Many of the changes that are in the bill that you have before you, the substitute, were at the request of the commission, and the purpose for those was to ensure that we can do our job. We want health and safety for the patients, and again, working closely with the industry, we want to be sure that the good actors can do the work that they want to do with this new industry, but at the same time, we want to make sure that there is a checkmate for any bad actors should they get out of line with compliance with the law. The most important components are addressed, I believe, in underscore, but of significance for those who may be concerned, again, or may be uninformed about the law. This does provide some enforcement capacity for the commission, which is very important for any regulated industry. There's nothing that's included in this bill that's outside normal for any licensing structure that's in place in the state of Georgia. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
I've got 3 areas, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. I feel like you're probably the best person to answer, but I see a few changes that seem to be structural changes, not just housekeeping to me. And I need you to explain to me these replacement licenses. You're now getting rid of the competitive application process and replacing that with some rules and regulations that your commission may establish?
Yes, sir, and Representative, feel free to jump in if I don't address this in a format that's suitable to you. The process that was initially set up with the passage of House Bill 324 routed the competitive application RFP process, Senator, through the Department of Administrative Services. And so that change-up is at the request of DOAS, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but we've worked very closely with them through this process. But the most important components of their process require a lot of things that are in direct conflict with the nature of House Bill 324, which is the commission statute. So the language that you see in place here is a process where the commission will adopt rules that mimic the requirements with the Department of Administrative Services for competitive RFPs, but don't run into those conflicts. And some of those conflicts are actually in a little different capacity. If you're not familiar with DOAS, again, this is for any individual that's watching watching that's not as familiar with state government, but that process is for letting contracts or bids on goods or services out. And this is a license, so it's not for sale. So the intent of the law was good. It put structure in place for a new state agency that didn't have any lines on the side of the road. And we've gone through that process, and we've learned a lot through that process. But we've also learned that the commissioner at DOAS has to waive a large portion of the Georgia Purchasing Act because it's in direct conflict with the commission. So we did request that process so that we can adopt our own for licenses in the future.
So see, we knew what we were buying when we agreed to follow DOAS procedures because we had a competitive bid process. Now you're asking us to give you free reins to develop your own bidding procedures at your discretion where we aren't able to. It may be totally different than what our original intent was in the bill.
I believe the language that's included in sub for 645 indicates that it has to closely mirror the guidelines that are in place with Department of Administrative Services, which would be a competitive bid process as well as independent evaluation, which is what the commission has utilized.
My second question is, this appears to be a big structural change in allowing production licensees that are growing the marijuana to also be dispensaries. I was on the conference committee, that was not our intent. Am I right that that's what this is doing? You're now going to allow production licensees to be retail dispensaries, and in matter of fact, for them to be able to, there at lines 183 to 189, it looks like they may insist upon it, that your commission has no right to reject their request to be dispensaries also.
So I'll speak to the first part of that, and Representative, feel free to address the latter part. Regarding the first part, in House Bill 324, there's no prohibition for a dispensing licensee, which the dispensing license is issued under Part 2 of the law. There's no prohibition for a Part 2 licensee. That would be the production licensees, both for Class 1 and Class 2. Nothing will prohibit them from pursuing a dispensing license, which is issued in a different part of the law in the original House Bill 324. So there's no prohibition in the original law, and the latter part of the language that you see in sub 645 mirrors that as well. And on the other parts, if you don't mind, Senator, I'll let the bill sponsor speak to those.
I'll just finish up with this one with you. This now says that you shall issue such production licensee a sufficient number of licenses to make its products available throughout the state, right?
That's my understanding.
And then it increases the number of retail licenses to where instead of making them available to patients throughout the state, now they must be able to choose from more than one retail outlet within a reasonable distance from their home. So it sounds like you just doubled the number of retail licenses and allowed the producers to be vertically integrated, and each of them has a right to receive dispensary licenses. Am I reading this wrong?
You're correct, yes. I'm happy to put a number on it. We didn't have a number on it, but I'm happy to put one on it. But what we found out was when you have a vertically integrated process, which was what the original bill had suggested we do, you have a better quality control.
That was your bill before the Senate.
That is correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You have better quality control, and these companies also retain and employ pharmacists and physicians who they are able to put into those dispensaries. So when we talk about a dispensary, I know the gentleman on the screen said a pot shop, and I'm here to tell every one of you, I don't want pot shops in Georgia. I will stand against a pot shop in Georgia. What I want is a medically oriented pharmaceutical grade facility that someone goes into, and it very much looks like an urgent care facility where you have doctors and you have these companies that have educated individuals that can sit down with these patients. Another thing is, if you don't have a medical card here in the state of Georgia, you should not be able to enter a dispensary if you're not one of the 18 or 19 eligible diagnoses here in the state of Georgia. But yes, when you talk about allowing a licensee to dispense the very product that they've cultivated, that ensures that you have less hands handling it, that there is a seed to sale structure that can track that particular product and know exactly where that product is going. Now, if we want to limit that, I'm fine with putting a number on it. But I do think that the very people who have grown this product, who have brought together the physicians, the scientists, and the cultivators to produce an oil should have the ability to dispense that oil and talk to the patients that are taking that particular product. In addition to having private dispensaries out there as well, in a limited fashion, highly regulated, that will adhere to a standard that we as the legislature have put in place.
Can I ask one final question? I can ask
Certainly.
this to the author. All right, so the other thing you do in here is you require, and I'm now at line 210 and 211, you require these dispensary licensees to only maintain an inventory or offer sale of the low THC oil or products provided by production licensee operating within Georgia. So you're prohibiting out-of-state products from being sold in Georgia when we're trying to get these products available to our patients in such dire need?
Yes, we are prohibiting out of state. I mean, right now, the truth is, and as we mentioned last year, if you want a joint or any form of marijuana, if you want to smoke it, eat it, rub it, smell it, and whatever, you could go within 2 miles of this Capitol and get it. But the truth of the matter is, if you wanted a lab-tested, safe oil, you can't find that anywhere in the state of Georgia. Even if you're legally registered with our state in adherence to our law, there's nowhere you can go to get it. So we want, when these licenses are issued, when the commission chooses the 6 cultivators that are going to be approved, they have 12 months to get their products up and running. They have 12 months to cultivate, to produce, and to be able to have ready for sale the 4 allowed delivery products in our state. They have 12 months to do that. I would love to stop seeing out-of-state product coming in here to Georgia. And right now it is, because there's no other legal means.
We're close to getting the hook
Yes,
here.
sir.
So I want to see if we can wrap this up.
Yes, sir.
Because we have in danger of not doing the last bill. Do we have any further questions from the committee? Senator Huff-Settler, is that 11?
12, I think it says.
Okay.
I just want to make the point that the federal government and state of Florida, low THC is not 5%, it's less than 1%. To me, the Georgia law saying 5% just isn't legally or scientific. It's a definition I know that we went to. We started off at 0.3%, but I don't agree that calling 5% THC low THC is correct.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Clay, I presume you're in favor, so I'll hopefully, you got 10 seconds.
I can do it. One, I do want to appreciate. 2, I want to say thank you for the directors setting some up and moving. Representative Gravely, senators, this committee with the doctors have the knowledge and input where it's needed. I'd love to answer some of the questions were raised. We'll do it in a different format. I can do that later. I want to say thank you. Remember, we're about medicine here. We're about quality medicine for patients in Georgia. You know that. Pass this bill as it is.
Mr. Gravely, we do have a couple of amendments there in front of us. I presume you've looked at those.
I know, I think Senator Kirkpatrick's amendment.
Senator Kirkpatrick.
The Medical Association.
And you're good with that amendment?
Yes, I think it says that the Oversight Committee shall, yes, please read.
Yes, do you mind, if you would, please?
Okay. It basically pulls physician consultation into the process. So on line 103, it would read, to review in consultation with physicians licensed under Chapter 34 of Title 43, new treatment and delivery methods for low THC oil and products that may result from medical and clinical research and are not inconsistent with this article.
Yes.
And then on line 270 in the sub, it talks about the Oversight Committee and changes may to shall. So it would read, the Oversight Committee shall regularly seek input from patients and physicians.
Yes. I view that as a very friendly amendment.
And then the other was another amendment to the substitute House Bill 645. by striking quotation mark at the end of line 247 and inserting following line 247 the following C, the Commission, the State Board of Pharmacy shall each be authorized by rules and regulations to require their respective applicants for retail dispensing licenses to submit a non-refundable application fee in an amount not to exceed $5,000 concurrent with submission of the application and annual retail dispensing licensing fee in an amount not to exceed $1,500 for each retail outlet operated.
Yes, I am aware of that amendment. I think that answers Dr. Raduca's question of making it that they have to apply for and have to have a regulated process. I believe
Anybody
that's
have
a
any
friendly.
questions about these amendments? So let's do amendment from Senator Kirkpatrick first. Let's do hands. All those in favor of amendment number 1, we'll use it. All those in favor, raise your hand. That looks unanimous. And then for the one that is in front of us, the one I just read, AM 33, 1963, all those in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. So I need to count this 1, 2, 3. All right. So all those in opposition to that, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I vote with the former, which I do, that ties. It still fails. So that amendment fails. All right. So we're in the posture now of passing House Bill 645. Let me make sure we get that. That amendment failed. All right. I apologize. I got a little parliamentary inquiry here, so I did not do that appropriately. So the First Amendment, I need a motion for that amendment first. So moved. Senator Orrak, seconded. Second, Senator Al, and any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Again, sorry about that. Okay, it was unanimous. And I will just not accept the Second Amendment since that one failed, so I'm not going to vote that again, if that's okay. All right, so now we're in the posture of the House Bill 605 as amended, but it really is House Bill 605 as a substitute. And I need a thank you. And have a second. Have a second for the bill. Second for the bill, Senator Al. All those in favor, raise your hand. Yes, you can have discussion.
I just want to say, I really do respect you greatly, Representative Gravely, but to call this a cleanup bill is an absolute insult. This is a fundamental change in several ways of the bill we just passed last year. No licenses have been granted yet to anybody, and we are already doubling the number of dispensary licenses at least by this. You are creating the framework for legalized marijuana either wittingly or unwittingly by doing this. We don't know what the demand is, and we are doubling it. We're allowing the production licensees to now have dispensary licensees, not only allowing, we are giving them the right to demand them once they have a production license. In addition, there's a section here that I didn't even have time to question about the university system. As this bill was designed, particularly the system, the version coming out of the Senate, the 2 land-grant universities would have the right to do the research on this, and at their option to partner with other licensees to do their research product development that they chose to do. This now allows any university in the university system or comparable private college to do it, but requires them to partner with the licensee to do it, which commercializes the product here. And I just think we're making a heck of a lot of changes before we've even got the system up and running yet. No demand for them, and there's no good reason for this other than going back to the House position that they did not prevail on 1 year ago.
I got
So
you.
I oppose the.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe you'll vote for it so you can be on the conference committee there. And I think I got maybe a disagreement of opinion. I'm not going to recognize him, though, but I am going to call the question. So all those in favor, raise your hand for this bill as outlined. We have one voting for it, and all those opposed. All right, the bill fails. All right, so all right, so that was recommended to do pass. It did not pass, so we might have to bring that back with some work to be done. And if it will have the pleasure of the committee, but we still have a few more days. And so that's where we are. The posture is now. I need to talk to the Secretary of Senate and see if we have time left on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, am I free to go, or do you need me here? Okay.
Out of respect for the next committee, we're going to adjourn. So your bill will be at the top of the list. Chair Lady Cooper, I apologize about that, but we'll get it done. And then,
Just be in contact.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.